What are you thinking? It matters more than you realize. Stick around.
This is the Franchise Pitfalls and Profit Show. Each week, we bring you the challenges and triumphs of being in the franchise development and consulting business. The things you need to make money faster. And now your host, one of the most successful franchise developers in North America, Don Shin.
I think most of my audience are what sometimes I've heard called solopreneurs. You work by yourself, you work out of your home, you maybe work in a small office. You're not scaling, you don't have a lot of employees, or maybe you have a VA along working with you. But the bottom line is you are primarily every day getting up and having to build your own momentum and having to run your business yourself. And so, consequently, what I have often thought and believed is that it can be a pretty lonely business, even if you're in a franchise, even if you're in a broker or a consultant organization. So, one of the things that I have found as part of the seven essentials or seven keys that have been successful for me in my life has been my thought life, my mental capacity. And so I wanted to talk about that. I think I maybe I've talked about this here and there before, but I really wanted to focus this time together today on your thought life. And I'm not a big fan of using a lot of slides here, and you know that, but I am going to use a couple of things very, very, very quickly. And Because I want to start with a couple of quotes that I think really frame up this topic today, and the power of the mind. That's what's happening. That's what I really wanted to talk about, and I wanted to talk about why it's so important. So a couple of quotes just kind of frame things up and to get things started together. One is, the happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. Another one is, where the mind goes, the man follows. Isn't that kind of interesting? And then, a third one, and you've probably heard this one before. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And that was from certainly the very famous Henry Ford. And then a fourth one, and again, I thought this was kind of interesting. Your mind can either be a junkyard or it can be a treasure chest. Your mind can be a junkyard or a treasure chest. So let's dive in here to some of the things I really wanted to talk about today. Um, I want to talk about how this works, really why this is so important. As the quote said, our lives follow our thoughts. So that means that positive thoughts have a very powerful and positive effect on our overall health, and certainly on our success. Negative, cheap, common, or low thoughts, they drain us. Negative thinking can actually produce a defeatist attitude. Positive, honorable thoughts are value enhancing. They uplift yourself and they uplift those around you. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. I've heard it said, I've read that 90% of what we do is based on our habits. So our thought patterns are habits; they become habits, and we almost live. Again, if this is accurate, even close to being accurate, it means most of our life is on autopilot. It's kind of pre-programmed for how we will always look at and handle situations. And so, again, if we want to have more control and a positive impact on our lives, we need to be looking at those patterns. We need to be looking at those habits. Again, I'm going to talk about that in a second. Nothing happens unless it is formed in our mind. Again, whether it's autopilot or not, but it's still formed in our mind as to how we handle the majority of our situations. And I believe we must first win in our minds, how important and powerful the mind is. We've got to win there. That's the first and very important battlefield. So let's talk about some tools to improvement, tools to improve. One is to be present. This helps us with our with a positive thought life, since we're often thinking of future worries and future possibilities. And this robs us of the pleasure of the moment. A lot of times we're pulling past issues or failures, and we're hashing over them again and again. And they're not going to change because they're from the past. But again, this is negative. This is draining. This is not healthy. We talked about habits, and we really need to train our minds, but that takes practice. So how often have you found yourself where your mind is just drifting, it's roaming, and often this leads to indecision, this leads to uncertainty, fear, and worry and anxiety. So we need to start to control our minds. We need to practice disciplining our minds, and we need to really make it a daily practice of filling our minds with the possibility, with encouragement, with uplifting, with honorable and valuable thoughts. More tools. Study your thoughts. This is not going. You're not going to make changes unless you recognize where you are and what you're doing, and how that is how that's working for you. Study your thoughts, analyze your thoughts. Another thing is to you really have to believe. One of my mentors and good friends, Jeffrey Gitomer, Jeffrey, in one of his 17 or 18 books, Jeffrey talked about you must believe you are the best company or the best solution for your prospects and for your customers. If you think you're number two, or you think you're less than somebody else, then you're not going to be that successful. And that thought process, again, will just hold you back from being successful. So you need to believe. What are you telling yourself as you're living? If you're a consultant and you're working with someone, you must believe that if they don't use you, they're going to have a poor outcome. They are going to be not be served in the best way that they need to be served. Another thing is what's called thought replacement, and I have another quote. It's from Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. By the way, side note, old motivational speaker and author, but boy, is his stuff priceless. If you ever get the chance to pull down an old book from Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, do it. They're great books. So he has this concept of, and talks about the concept of thought replacement. He says that replace each weak thought with a strong one. Replace each negative thought with a positive one. Replace each gloomy thought with an uplifting one. And if you've ever smoked cigarettes, or you've been around someone who smokes, one of the things they teach is you just can't stop smoking. You need to replace it with something else. This is why sometimes people replace it with food, but it's better replaced with like carrots or something crunchy or whatever. This is why sometimes folks who stop smoking, which is a great thing, sometimes will gain weight. So maybe, in that scenario, you should replace it with, if you get the urge to have a cigarette during the day, go take a walk, go outside, get some fresh air, do something positive. And again, this is just this concept of changing habits, and you just can't stop the habits. And it's the same thing with thoughts. You replacing these weak, negative or gloomy thoughts, replacing them with better thoughts. Um, Thinking about your expectations, thinking about what you want out of a situation, what you want out of life. This is a good thing. This is a positive thing. So You want to think about positive outcomes. I know personally, for some reason, I used to be in this habit of thinking of scenarios I'm in the middle of, and kind of having two or three scenarios, are really bottom line minimal. This would be okay, but it's not great. And then I'd have an average one, and then I'd have an awesome one. Well, I'm telling you, if you do that, eliminate the weak one and the average one, and go for, set your mind on the one that has great possibilities, that have great outcomes. So what is your thought life around expectations? And then emotions. Our emotions simply respond honestly to what we're thinking. And one of the pieces of these emotions honestly is anger. And again, Dr. Norman Vincent Peale talks about controlling our emotions, that past emotions and past wounds can cause you to make poor decisions and choices today, poor decisions and choices in the moment. So the mind is efficient if it's cool, if it's calm, and it's not hot, and you want to control that emotion of anger. Um, so I want to challenge you today. I want to leave you with something. It's funny. I was just listening to a sermon by Pastor Craig Groeschel, and he was taught to pastor or to give his sermons, that he always needed to have a practical piece of it. And I hope that this is something good for you. So I want to put out a challenge. The first part of the challenge is to rate yourself. Be honest on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1, I'm really bad, and 10, I'm incredible at this. How do you rate yourself as far as your thought life? Or are you a positive thinker? Second is, what mental images do you have of yourself? Are you focused on problems, or are you focused on solutions? Um, Another one is, what do you allow your mind to dwell on? What do you allow your mind to dwell on? Where do you allow your thoughts to roam to? And by the way, again, you can make up numbers and you can have make up answers to this. Be careful not to answer in a way that is what you want and hoped and wished you were like. Be honest. Nobody else is going to see these answers. Be honest to yourself in these areas. So more points to challenge, more analysis, more self reflection. What are you passing around to those around you with negative thoughts and attitudes? If you do have negative thought, and we all do. I don't care how good you are, how strong a positive thinker you are. Almost everybody somewhere along the line has a little bit of a negative thought or an attitude. But overall, who are you passing your thought life to? And this honestly is really important to me, because you've heard me say that my legacy and my goal in life is to impact and leave a legacy that impacts my grandchildren's grandchildren. So I have a generational legacy that I'm living for and driving to. So if you have anything like that, but if you're a leader of any kind, at church, or at Rotary, or at your networking group, that your thought life is going to be passed around to the people that you influence. So I want you to be honest with yourself and say, who am I passing these things around to? And then lastly, I'm going to ask you to look at one thing out of all of this. Please look at one thing that you can work on. What can you work on now? Don't try to have some massive results right away. Don't over plan. Just take one thing that you can do to improve your thought life, to change some of your habits in your thought life. So I want to close with a couple of quotes for you again, just to wrap up how important this is, and how serious I feel about this, about you making some improvement, taking some action, taking on that challenge to look at your thought life. There was a Roman poet, Horace, who said, "Rule your mind, or it will rule you." Do you care about making sure that what your thought life is, and the people around you and your own success? You want to just be like a boat in the water with no oars, or do you want to control where you're headed? And then the last quote I want to leave with you, it's from a person called Kindra Hall. And she said, "The most important story is the one you tell yourself." So much about this, or so much of this, is about your personal mental and physical health, your personal life. I always use this quote because or this scenario, this word picture of on the airplane. I was just came back from a trip, and they always tell you to put on, if oxygen is required, put on your own mask before you help someone else. It is not selfish to take care of your own mental health and your own physical health. And by working on your thought life, that's exactly what you're going to be doing. And I promise you that the people that you influence, the people around you, the people that make a difference to you, the people who look up to you will benefit.